But back in the day, I would carry a sketchbook everywhere. And I draw on the subway. I draw online or on an airplane waiting for somebody in a restaurant. So draw as much as you can.
Thank you once again for joining us today. I am your host, David Block. Today, I'm happy to welcome a senior art director known for his unique blend of humor and creativity on projects like the album cover for Tenacious D. Dan Meth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David. Happy to be here.
Excellent. No problem. No problem. I'm glad you could spend the time with me, and I'm looking forward to getting to know your career a bit more. And so this show is basically a behind-the-scenes tour of your journey into your career. And so I'd like to start with the first question, which is talking about your current role. If you could talk about what you do on a day-to-day basis. You attended Syracuse University and you went to Pratt. I'd like to know how your educational experience plays into or shaped your approach to design, art, and animation.
Yeah, so I majored in illustration at Syracuse,
Yeah.
undergraduate, and I had some great professors that I learned a lot from, and I'm still in touch with some of them. And it was an interesting time because that was the late 90s. And a lot of the methods we used back then are probably not what people are doing today. But I'm sort of glad that I did learn from those veterans because it gave me a different understanding of how to take the process in which you start brainstorming and thumbnailing and then, you know, eventually designing your final product.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, a little bit later, I do have a question about your creative process. I'd love to hear how that goes. Now, my next question would be about your freelancing. When you started your career, you started freelancing at places like New York Times, Comedy Central, the Walt Disney Animation Studios. Fantastic resume. And I'm curious, how did you go about getting those freelance gigs, and how did those experiences influence your creative style?
Yeah, well, I got most of my work by making things that nobody asked for and putting them on the internet and just seeing who they were shared, they were passed around, and eventually I'd get a call. Oh, I saw this cartoon you did. Would you like to do something for us? And then, that leads to maybe another job. But also, networking and knowing people at some of these places who, I mean, it has to be said, like you help somebody out, they help you out later. And a lot of the times just knowing somebody as a friend or meeting for coffee ends up down the line, something you get some work from it. So
Right.
it's networking.
Got it. Okay. If you're enjoying this video, please take a moment to hit that like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you. Now, on just a sort of a tangent, in terms of your style of art, do you take inspiration or reference from any art movements? I'm sure you do. It does kind of seem like there's a little bit. If I were to name a couple, I see a little pop art, definitely some surrealism, and that sort of thing. So is that about? Did I nail that?
For sure.
Yeah.
But also some very mainstream in my time stuff like Mad Magazine was a huge influence on me. I had a subscription for probably 6 years, and that was a great time in MTV where they were doing animation, and I was soaking that up. And I mean, I'm sort of like a sponge. Like my whole childhood, I was just accumulating comic books and art books of all sorts and underground comics, all kinds of stuff, Marvel comics. So yeah, it all sort of blends into the artist to make a new style.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Fantastic. So now you created some iconic pieces like the Tenacious D Beatles tribute. And I'd like to know if you could talk about the creative challenges or the inspiration actually behind that particular project?
So that project, I did a lot of work with this one record label that did a lot of comedy albums. So I had done some stand-up comedy CD covers, and then they were like, "Do you want to do Tenacious D?" I was like, "Yes."
Right.
And for that one, it really came together really quick because they were like, "This is a Beatles cover song, and it's a charity fundraising album." So I just thought Beatles. They were doing some Let It Be tracks. So I said, okay, Tenacious D through the Let It Be album cover, or Abbey Road actually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Abbey Road cover through the Tenacious D lens, and it sort of very quickly formed in my head. And that's a I had a little conflict in my mind about that because that album cover has been parodied so many times. So it's like it's not really like the freshest idea, but it really lent itself to it. So I went ahead with it.
Excellent. Another project was the fantasy world map that you did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious what your process was for designing such a detailed piece.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of maps and fantasy. So that one, I think sometimes the thought occurs to you real fast. Like, what if every fantasy land was in the same continent or something? And then it's just such a ridiculous idea to have like, the Moomins right next to Mordor or whatever. So I just thought, oh, this is just funny. So I put that on my Tumblr blog, and I still sell posters about every couple of weeks. Somebody buys a poster off my website. So
Awesome.
yeah,
That's great.
it's like 10 years ago, 15 years ago now.
Yeah, there are a lot of nerds out there. That's fantastic. I am one of them. And working on the mural for Google's office, what an awesome opportunity. That must have been a unique project. Could you talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, sure. I'll fully admit this was a networking. I got this through a friend who I took him to my art show. I lived in Amsterdam for a few years.
Oh.
So he was visiting, and we went and looked at I had a one-man gallery show, and he worked for Google, and he did some talking and with his coworkers and convinced them to let me design this mural in the lobby in Cambridge, Boston.
Nice.
And they said, yeah, just go off on the theme being Boston, which is not, I've never lived there or anything, but I've been there. So I did a lot of research, and I gathered everything I could think of about Boston and tried to put it all into this one image.
Nice. It came out beautiful. That's
Thank
fantastic. Do you know if it's still there?
It's not there anymore. So that was a temporary building while they were building their main headquarters. And unfortunately, I never even got to see it with my own eyes. It was all digital. So like I did it in Photoshop, really high res, and sent the file away, and it was gone by the time I got back to America. So I think it was there for about 2 or 3 years.
Right. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, it was a good experience.
Yeah, it's great.
So, and now you've also got a bunch of weird and wonderful GIF animations, which I've tried to find the right words. Weird and wonderful. I think it fits. And I'm curious, were those done as on contract, or were they passion projects?
I think both. I'm not sure which ones you've seen. There's some of them still. Well, I worked at BuzzFeed for a while,
right,
which was a great experience. I was there for 2 or 3 years as just like an artist writer, and just coming up with things. And they had a lot of traffic back then. So there's one of them, like it's a spoof on Tinder, and so that was basically for a client, and a lot of the other ones were probably just for my blog.
And now that one, that was the timber one, right? That
Yeah,
you're talking
timber.
about. I love that.
Thank you.
That was great. Now, what was the purpose? Was it used for a specific purpose, or just to get attention, or
that? I mean, BuzzFeed was like the perfect job for me because all we did was come up with things to be spread on the internet.
Yeah.
sometimes there were illustrations for articles, or we wrote our own articles. But in that case, I think we were on, Instagram or TikTok or Vine or something like that. So, anything you think of, there was a place for it at that time.
Yeah,
There was a
absolutely.
use.
Okay, great. Now, now, as I sort of alluded to in the beginning of the conversation, I'd really like to hear about your creative process, and how do you start a project, especially when it involves like complex illustrations or animations? Where do you go with that?
What I always do is I start with a pencil and a paper, and I try to get away from the computer, um, because sometimes it's right there, but you're being distracted by too many possibilities, and so I sketch out as many ideas as I can. Sometimes I'll think about it going to sleep at night. I'll try to see it as I'm falling asleep. What's the idea I haven't thought of yet? Um, and yeah, you just keep developing it through thumbnails. Hopefully, you have a art director or a client that if you showed them 5 ideas, they would choose the one they like best. It's always better to have them reject a couple,
Right.
and not go straight from the first one you give them, because sometimes they might change their mind, and then you've wasted a lot of time. So
Right.
let them choose. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Now, I'd like to know, among all of your projects, looking back on your career, which one would be your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
I do have a favorite. There was a I feel like a lot of my work is a little edgy, like edgier than I want it to be sometimes. I just have a kind of a Mad Magazine sense of humor. I'm a smartass. But I did this one video called Watermelon Nights, which was a episode of a web series I had called The Meth Minute. So, but this one episode, Watermelon Nights, it's just a real sweet cartoon you could show kids, and it's just nice. And people love it too. I still get a lot of nice messages about it, and I think that's sort of my favorite. And through that, like watermelon, which is my favorite food, watermelon has sort of become like my good luck totem. It's almost like a mascot in the Dan Meth universe of my cartoons and my art. So yeah, I think that's my favorite now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And boy, that went pretty quick, but we made it right to the last question. And I actually have one final about advice that you might have for new creatives. If you have any words of wisdom, pearls of wisdom for anybody just starting out, looking to get into animation or illustration.
Yeah. I mean, I would say carry a sketchbook everywhere. And it used to be a lot easier because there wasn't cell phones. There wasn't, iPhones that take up all your spare moments. But back in the day, I would carry a sketchbook everywhere. I draw on the subway. I draw online or on an airplane waiting for somebody in a restaurant. So draw as much as you can. Even when you're watching television, I draw. And the other thing would just be nice, like make friends, be interested in other people's work, and just try to have a big network, and be likable, and just be the nicest person you can, and people will want to work with you and hire you. Yeah. And also one more thing is I would say, like, watching cartoons is not always what you should be doing. You watch all kinds of movies, like soak up cinema and read a lot of books that aren't comic books. Like, just have like a lot of ideas and visuals swirling in your head. Yeah.
Yeah. Surround yourself with that stuff. Yeah.
Everything, knowledge, art. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much once again for your time and for being on my show. And
Thank you.
It's been great to get to know you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much for having me, and good luck, everybody.